of the two-day trip in March of 1935, J.R. and his older brothers, Roy, born 1921, and Jack, 1929, huddled together under a tarpaulin in the bed of the truck, trying to protect themselves from the punishing cold and rain. The ride along muddy roads was all the more frightening because the vehicle frequently hit potholes with such force that the boys feared the wheels might be knocked loose at any moment. Their mother tried to calm them and her two daughters, Reba, 1934, and Louise, 1923, with music and the assurance that God was watching over the family. The story of Dice had its roots in the Great Depression, when most of the farmers in the state, including J.R.'s father, struggled to survive. As the price of a 500-pound bale of cotton dropped from $125 in 1928 to $35 in 1932, there was panic among farmers over how to provide for their families. President Roosevelt, according to the popular version of a complicated bureaucratic backstory, came to the rescue with a plan to give distraught workers the chance of a more secure future. Through the Federal Emergency Relief Administration, funds were allocated to build small cooperative communities around the country to provide some deserving farmers with homes, 20 acres of land, and a small annual stipend for food and clothing. The social experiment also called for new buildings to house support services, including a cotton gin, general store, restaurant, school, hospital, post office, and gas station. Officially titled Colonization Project No. 1, DICE was one of the first cooperatives. In May 1934, more than 1,300 workers taken from Arkansas's welfare rolls had started building houses and roads on a 16,000-acre spread of land. At the same time, the government began taking applications for DICE farmers. Only Caucasians were eligible. This wasn't welfare, the applicants were told. The town's new arrivals had to work the land and then use money from the crops, chiefly cotton, to repay the government the cost of the housing, the property, and the stipend before they could receive the deed to the property. When Ray Cash heard about the DICE project on the radio, he decided in an instant to apply. Thousands of destitute men lined up at government offices throughout the state to apply for only 500 homesteads. Ray Cash wasn't intimidated. He presented himself as just the kind of hard-working, industrious family man and fiercely patriotic American that he felt the government administrators were seeking. His paternal roots in North America dated back to 1667, when one of his ancestors, William Cash, came across the Atlantic from Scotland on the ship Good Intent and settled in Essex County, Massachusetts. William's descendants then migrated to Virginia in the early 1700s and on to Georgia, where Ray Cash's grandfather, Reuben Cash, was born. After Reuben's plantation was destroyed by General William T. Sherman's troops during the Civil War, the former Confederate soldier moved west to Arkansas in 1866. Ray's father, William Henry Cash, was 6. He grew up to be a farmer and a Baptist preacher, a circuit rider who served 4 widely separated counties. Ray, one of 12 children, was born in 1897. In the interview process for the DICE land, Ray stressed not only his military service — he had served in France briefly during World War I — but also how hard he had worked to support his family after farming became unprofitable. He'd pursued odd jobs, sometimes walking miles to cut wood at a sawmill or hopping a freight train to Charleston, Mississippi, to help dismantle a chemical plant. Still, there were no guarantees that he would be chosen, and he was desperate to secure some kind of permanent work. After finishing the rigorous interview, he suffered a week of sleepless nights before getting the good news. Ray Cash was one of just 5 applicants from all of Cleveland County to be accepted for the program. Following the grueling truck ride from Kingsland, the Cashes arrived at their new home in DICE, carried in the colony records as house number 226 on Road 3. Years later, photos of early DICE houses make the residences look primitive and bare-boned, bringing to mind Walker Evans' stark photos of American poverty during the Great Depression. Indeed, the days of rainfall had left the mud so deep and thick on the property that Ray had to leave the truck 100 yards away from the house and carry J.R. the rest of the way. Still, the new home looked like a mansion to the Cashes. It had been painted white with green trim.